Alright, so today we are going to learn how to solve a multi-step or a two-step inequality. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and write down the algorithm. The algorithm is going to look very similar to when we solved two-step equations. So there are 6 steps, which seems like a lot, but it should start to sound familiar from when we did equations. So the first step is to use the distributive property if needed. I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Alright, so then our second step is combine like terms if needed. And if you don't remember how to do the distributive property or the combine like terms, you can go back and look at some of your notes from equations. Those were the first couple of things that we did. That will kind of jog your memory on how to do distributive property and combine like terms. The third step is undo addition and subtraction. So remember, we're going to start on the side of the equation of the inequality that has the variable, and then if we need to undo addition or subtraction, we're going to do that. Then we're going to do the same thing to the other side of the equal sign. And then our fifth step is, remember, we undo multiplication or division, and that's whatever is attached to the variable. And then do the same thing to the other side. Remember, algebra is all about keeping everything fair and equal, balanced. And then I'm going to put a little caution, so this is important, and I'm doing it in a different color and I'm starring it. And the caution is, remember to reverse the inequality sign. If you're multiplying or dividing by a negative. And we'll get some practice with that today. That will make sense after you see some examples, which we've talked about that before, but it will make more sense as we keep practicing it. Alright, so let's look at our first example. It says, as a salesperson, you are paid $52 per week plus $3 per sale. This week, you want your paycheck to be at least $100. Write an inequality for the number of sales that you need to make. Describe the solutions. Alright, so part A says write an inequality to represent the number of sales you need in order to be paid at least $100 for this week. So I want $100, but I would be happy if I made $200. So I am paid $52 whether I work or not, or whether I make a sale or not, I guess I should say. Then I'm paid $3 for every sale that I do. And I want that, my paycheck, to be at least $100. So if I get paid $100, I'm happy, and if I get paid more than that, I'm really happy. So there's what my inequality looks like. Then it says solve the inequality. I'm just going to go ahead and use what I've already written. So I'm going to separate my inequality like I do my equations. I'm going to start on the side that has the variable, and I'm going to undo addition or positive by subtracting. 100 minus 52 is 48. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and S is greater than or equal to 16 sales. So in order to make at least $100, I have to have 16 or more sales. Then it says without graphing, describe what your graph would look like. So it's greater than or equal to, so it's a closed circle. And then my closed circle on 16. and then I'm going to shade, so that means all numbers greater than or equal to 16. So my shading is all numbers bigger than or greater than 16. So instead of representing that as how a mathematician would, I've written it how Miss Barnowski might write it. Then it says, how can you check your solution? So I can check my solution. I'm going to use a different color just so we can see it. I'm going to check my solution by substituting 16, because that is an answer. Or I could do anything bigger than 16. So any number 16 or bigger into the inequality. To make sure it's equal or bigger than 100. And that's how I check my solution. Alright, so my next example says two-step inequalities with fractions. So it says solve x over negative 4 minus 5 is less than negative 2. So just like before, I'm going to separate my brothers and my sisters. Then I'm going to start with subtraction, and I undo that with addition. So I'm left with x over negative 4 is less than 3. Negative 2 plus 5 is 3. Then I undo division with multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 4. I'm left with x on my brother's side, and then I need to remember I'm multiplying by a negative sign, or a negative number, so my inequality sign reverses. And then 3 times 4 is 12, positive times a negative is a negative. So my solution is all numbers greater than negative 12, and then it says to graph. So my graph is going to look like this. I have negative 12, negative 13, negative 11. It is an open circle because it's greater than, and it's all numbers bigger than negative 12, so it's going to be shaded in the positive direction. So there's what my graph looks like. Alright, so you have an on your own. Go ahead and pause the video and work through those. I will do the same, and then we can come back and check our answers. Alright, so on the first on your own, I went ahead and in the first step, I just rewrote the problem so I could work with it. Then I added 3 to both sides. Then I multiplied both sides by 8. And then I got negative 80 is greater than x, or negative 80 is greater than all numbers. Another way that we can write that is we can write that as x is less than negative 80. So as long as my alligator, if you think of the alligator eating the bigger number, as long as the alligator still eats the faces the same way, I guess is what I should say, not eats the bigger number. As long as the alligator is eating the same thing, then I can put my x on the left-hand side of the inequality. For me, that makes it a little bit easier to graph. So either answer is fine. It does not matter to me. Typically, most mathematicians have their variable on the left-hand side of the equation, especially when we're talking about inequalities. Alright, so I went ahead and started working the next problem. The first thing, I just rewrote it so I have a little bit more room to work. Then I subtracted 10 from both sides. I started on the side that has the variable. That left me with negative 3x, or 30 is less than or equal to negative 3x. Now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3. And then when I do that, let's see, I get negative 10. I need to flip my inequality because I'm dividing by a negative. And so I have negative 10 is greater than or equal to x. And then just like before, I can flip my inequality sign so my variable is on the left-hand side. I don't care if you do that or not. That is perfectly optional. Alright, then my last example, I'll do that in a different color. I'm going to try and work it without rewriting it because I'm running out of room. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, and then I am left with x over negative 3 is less than negative 15. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 3, and when I do that I have to flip my inequality. Negative 3 times negative 15 is positive 45. Alright, so, and that's kind of hard to see because of my line. So x is greater than 45. Alright, so on the reflection, the last thing in your notes, it says, or one of the second to last thing in your notes, it says, how is solving inequalities different from solving equations? The main difference is, and you should know this, is when you multiply or divide by a negative, you reverse the inequality sign. So I'll go ahead and write that down, and you can write it down as well. Alright, so there I've written it down. When you multiply or divide by a negative, you reverse the inequality sign. And when I do notes, I like to go back and highlight or mark somehow the important things. So multiply or divide, not add or subtract. Then by a negative, you reverse the inequality sign. So that's just something that may or may not help you, but if you highlight or mark important words, sometimes that helps you remember a little bit better what you need to do. All right, let's look at our last example. Our last example is a real-world inequality. Kathy has $100 to spend on clothes. She wants to purchase a winter jacket for $40 and some sweaters that cost $20 each. How many sweaters can Kathy buy? All right, our first task says write an inequality to represent the situation. So she's for sure buying her jacket, and that's $40. And she also would like to buy some sweaters, and those are $20 each. So the number of sweaters she can buy depends on how much money she has, and that's what I don't know. So I use a variable, the price times how many she can buy, and then that total has to be less than or equal to 100. Alright, then my next task says solve the inequality. So I'm going to separate my brothers and my sisters. I'm going to start on the side that has the variable, and then I'm going to undo addition. So I have 20s is less than or equal to 100 minus 40 is 60. Then I need to get the s by itself, so I divide both sides by 20. So s is less than or equal to 3. S stands for sweaters, so my solution is Kathy can buy 3 or less sweaters. So we'll write it out for Miss Bernowski so she understands what we're saying. So Kathy can buy 3 sweaters or less. And then my last task says to graph that. So here is my graph. It's a closed circle because I can buy, or Kathy can buy 3, and then the numbers to the left are shaded because it has to be less than 3. So there is what my graph looks like. So that is how we solve inequalities that are more than one step, so 2-step inequalities. If you have any questions, come see me in the morning.